Hey everyone, the 2024 Norway chess tournament just finished in Stavanger and former world champion Magnus Carlsen won the event quite convincingly. This was one of the strongest events of the year, where top players like current world champion Ding Liren and American players Hikaru Nakamura and Fabiano Caruana participated. So let's try to see what made Magnus the best player of this event and learn some ideas from him. The first thing is his impeccable endgame play. Most of the games that he won were just grinding out positions on which he had a tiny advantage or even fairly equal positions. The position that we have in front is one of the best examples. Here white is a pawn up, but we have opposite colored bishops, so black has a lot of drawing chances, and here a move like c4 would definitely come to mind, just pushing the c-pawn and trying to create a pass pawn. But here after black takes and white takes, black can play something like knight to b4, attacking the pawn a2, white can easily defend that pawn or even go a3, but the main point is that now both the knight and the bishop are covering c6, so it is very hard for white to make progress in this position. The pass pawn cannot advance easily, but the idea is right to try to create a pass pawn. This is a very important ending principle. But before doing that, Magnus activates his king, which is another very important ending principle. So the king is now coming all the way in order to support the advance of the pass pawn and even trying to attack black's pieces. So here black went king to e6 and after king to d4, now we see a drawback of not having a dark square bishop for black. The king cannot go to d6, white has excellent control of the squares, and after knight to e7 and king to c5, this king is just very reactive. Black went king to d7, now Magnus activated the knight on d1, which was very passive, so Magnus is slowly but surely improving his position, and after h5, only now Magnus went c4, and after pawn takes, his idea is definitely to take with the b pawn in order to create a pass pawn, and after g5, and king to b6, white has a dominant position, not only being a pawn up, white has a very strong pass pawn, and also the king is attacking black's pieces, so Magnus won the game in just a few moves. Another great skill that Magnus has is to maximize his chances. In this position, he's playing as black against Fabiano Caruana. At first sight, the position might look fairly dull and drawish. We only have 3 pawns on the king side. White's position looks very solid. If black plays something like knight to f6, I really don't see anything going on here. But I'm pretty sure that Magnus knew that this position was fairly equal, but he still plays the moves that make life hard for his opponent. Here he went knight to d3, knight to f4 was also an alternative. The knight looks very nice on f4 as well, although here white can try to consolidate with queen to e3. But instead he went knight to g3, which is more in Magnus style because this move really tries to tie down white's pieces. There's some pressure on the pawn on e4, so the knight on d2 cannot move easily, and the queen and the rook are also quite active, so this position is already becoming tricky for white to play. Just to show you an example, if white wants to counterattack by going knight to f3, attacking the queen, here the move rook to d1 is actually very strong. If the knight goes to e1, then knight takes e4 will win material for black, and the king cannot go to h2 because after rook to h1 we have a very pretty checkmate. So Caruana tried another way to attack black's pieces by going king to h2, and here Magnus found a very nice tactic. He went rook takes e2, and white cannot take on d2 because there's going to be a fork on f1. For example, after rook takes d2, knight to f1, black is forking the king and the rook and winning material. But here Caruana's idea was to go queen takes g3, and after rook takes f2 and queen takes, queen to e5, black is forking the king and the pawn, and after the king moves and queen takes e4, in this sequence Magnus managed to win a pawn, and we get an ending. This ending with correct play might be holdover for white, but even Fabiano Caruana, one of the strongest players in the world, didn't have a chance to hold this position. And before I move on to the last position, if you want to get better at chess and improve on very important things like your ending and your middle game play, I have a free course that will help you with that, so you might want to check the link in the description. And the last important thing that helped Magnus become the champion was knowing how to build up an attack at the right time. Even though a lot of Magnus wins involve winning long endings, Magnus definitely knows how and when to attack, and here in this position against current world champion Ding Liren, black might have ideas to get some counterplay on the b file, white can definitely try to neutralize that, for example by going rook to b1, but black is not having any particular problems there. But instead Magnus saw that black is not having a lot of pieces on the king side, and he quickly organized an attack against black's king. So here he went bishop to d5, giving a check. This pretty much forces king to h8. If the king goes to f8 after queen to h5, we have an idea to give a checkmate or to capture on h7, so black's position is falling apart. So king to h8 is pretty forcing, and here Magnus had a few alternatives. Rook to g1 was actually quite interesting because this is a bit more flexible than queen to h5 that was played by Magnus. White still keeps an eye on the b2 square, so black cannot go rook to b2. And now white is preparing ideas like rook to g4 to double rooks on the g file. Rook to g4 also puts pressure against the pawn on d4. But queen to h5 is also very direct and interesting. And here Ding had to play actively. So here the move rook to b2 had to be played because white is quickly organizing an attack and black had to get some counterplay. Instead, Ding went queen to f8, which is a move that could be played a bit later. And here Magnus went rook to e4, preparing to activate the rook, also putting pressure on d4. And in this position, black had to anticipate Magnus' idea and go h6, even though this would give the pawn on d4. For example, after bishop takes and rook takes. Now black can try to get active after going knight to e5 and then trying to invade. Because here the move rook to b2 that was played in the game was just one move too late, the main idea is that white cannot take on d4 because after rook takes, black is forking the queen and the king. But amazingly, here Ding missed a very pretty checkmate in 2. After queen takes h7, he resigned because we get a checkmate after king takes and rook to h4. So even though Magnus is not playing a lot of classical chess lately, he can still play some very nice and deep ideas. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.